It's been 13 days since darts was live on our screens, and the first tournament of the year hits the track on January the 29th. It's the Masters, simply the 2021 Darts Masters. The top 24 players will be taking part, and pretty new format for this year with the addition of 8 players. Pieman and myself have already covered that in an earlier video, just an early look at the tournament. But today we've got a special guest with us, Ozzy Smith, podcast extraordinaire. You may have seen him on boxing podcasts, left, right and centre, particularly the Boxing Asylum, which I've also frequented over my time. So, yeah, we've got a first special guest. We're just going to run through the round 1 games where seeds 17 to 24 take part in. 13 to 24, isn't it? Sorry, that's wrong. Yeah, we're going to go through the first round games, and then we're going to look at who they might face in the second round. So that's what we're going to come on to. But without further ado, we're going to just give Ozzy a little bit of an introduction into the darting world, and we've got a couple of questions so you can get a feel of what kind of character you're dealing with, folks. So I'm going to ask Ozzy quick fire questions. Favourite darts player of all time?
Got 3.
Oh.
Mervyn King.
Oh yeah.
Colin Lloyd. And then one from Holland, Vincent Van Dever.
Oh, brilliant. We've got the walk-on song, the Jaws, and Merv King, one of Pieman.
I'm getting a bit of a feel for controversy there amongst them selections. Yeah, a bit of Merv King, bit of Colin Lloyd.
Exactly that.
Yeah, all got varied histories, let's say, maybe one for another time. Favourite darting memory, Ozzy?
So it was back in 2016 at the Masters. Dave Chisnell against Robert Thornton. Chisnell was 8-0 down and bounced back to win 10-9. And what made it even better is that I don't like Robert Thornton, and he was so annoyed at the end of it. And I think he's quite a bitter opponent, particularly when it's going against him. And Chizzy made an unbelievable comeback to win 10-9. Excellent performance, and sums Dave Chisnell up in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Favourite tournament on the darts circuit other than the Worlds?
Match play.
Match play, yeah. Nice. What would be your playing style on the hockey, Ozzy?
Heavy darts and aggressive.
Good.
Yeah. I'd like to see you and Pieman try and get in your ear like he does all of his other opponents. And for the final introductory question, who wins the Masters?
Dimitri Van den Bergh.
Oh, well, we've got a full house.
Full house.
All 3 of us are on. Yeah, we've got a full house.
Feel really sorry for him now. He's completely
he's got no chance to win in. He is 16-1 for anyone that wants to follow our advice, but we'll come on to the prices. So straight in then with the first game. All these first round games that we're going to talk about today will take place on the Friday, Friday the 29th, is it? 29th, yeah. So the top 8 seeds don't come in until the second round. We'll come on to that. And obviously with the Worlds only happening less than a month ago, we'll have plenty to say about all of these players. So first game up is Joe Cullen against Stephen Bunting. I've got quite a strong opinion on this, but I'll let the Pieman go first. Bunting is 11-8 and Cullen is 8-13 to win this game. What do you reckon, Pieman?
Yeah, cheers, Adam. Nice to be back. One thing I would say about all these games before we get in too deep, when you're playing a 1st to 6 at this standard, I don't think you can confidently rule anyone out of any of these games, and that's generally reflected in the prices. Any of these players can kind of turn up for 6 to 10 legs and average a ton and cause a bit of an upset, But we're used to seeing this go over sort of 1st to 10, 1st to 11, and that does come in the later rounds. But going straight in with Joe Cullen, Stephen Bunting, I think this is a really good game. There's 2 players bang in form, best form they've shown in some time in their careers, respectively. The winner obviously playing Gerwin Price in round 2. Cullen had a really good year, even prior to the World Championship. I think he was a quarter-finalist in the Grand Prix, quarter-finalist in the Players' Champs, won on the floor. He was an 80-1 shot coming into the Worlds, but only went out after that fantastic game against MVG where he was 3-1 up and missed couple of match starts at the Bull. Just couldn't quite get over the line, but he lost nothing in defeat for me there, really. Stephen Bunting, the feel-good story of the tournament, 350-1 chance all the way to the semi-finals. Very unlucky losing to Gerwin Price in the semi-final, to be honest. Again, didn't do a lot wrong, lost 6-4. Went fully with Price for the first 8 sets of that game, I thought. And You know, he could consider himself a little bit unlucky, but it was a great run. Given he'd had COVID and completely lost his form and had a complete year to forget, I thought it was really impressive, to be honest. They both rejuvenated these players, and they'll both be desperate to get back on the hockey, I think. So I can see a case for both players winning this. But I think at the prices, you'd probably just edge with the outsider Bunting for me. But I think you might have a slightly different opinion, Ozzy, on this one. I think you quite fancy Joe Cullen, don't you?
I do, but I'm surprised how wide it is betting-wise, given how well Bunting performed at the Worlds. But that's saying Cullen, if he could have closed that out, we wouldn't be as shot then, because he would have obviously advanced into the next round as well. I like Cullen. I think from what he was, say, rewind the clock 5-6 years ago, where he was, you know, you just didn't know what Joe Cullen had turned up. That can still be the case. But as well, he's a lot more consistent now. And I do think that a quick fire 1st to 6 may well suit him. But at the same time as well, from a betting perspective, I would advise against, and if I'm just going on prices, Bunting's the value, without a doubt. I have this a lot closer. A coin flip is probably the best way to summarise it. But if I'm picking a winner, and who I think was throwing extremely well and was unfortunate to get beat off MVG, I would side with Cullen.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree too much there. Adam, don't know if you've got anything to add, but the winner playing Going Price, new world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be with Bunting. I said in our previous first look at this that at 125 to 1, I thought that was an insulting price on Bunting, given that what we'd seen him do at the Worlds. I think of all 24 players in this event, I think the 3 players in this mini section, Joe Cullen, Stephen Bunting and Gerwyn Price, I think those 3 players, we can say, are in the best form of their whole life. I don't think that can be said about any of the other 21 players. Unfortunately for those 3 guys, particularly Cullen and Bunting, they've drawn each other in the first round. Cullen, as we know, is exploits against MVG. I just think Bunting, I tried to get him beat numerous times at the Worlds from a betting angle, and he just kept delivering. He's got that new dart setup. He looks extremely comfortable with that. Scoring's fantastic, 140, 180 hitting. Yeah, I still think he's underestimated, and I would be backing him to beat Joe Cullen. Gerwyn Price awaits him round 2. You know, we know what Price has done recently, but just becoming the world champion, his confidence will be sky high. So that's an interesting part of the draw. From players bang in form to players bang out of form in game 2. In this section, Michael Smith, the number 9 seed in this, against Adrian Lewis, the 24th seed. So, you know, Lewis is just getting in really on his ranking. Both were disappointing at the Worlds. Neither of them won a game, I think. Am I right to say that? Yeah, neither of these won a game at the Worlds, which is very, very disappointing. Michael Smith's a 2-5 favourite. Adrian Lewis is 11-5 in this one. I wouldn't want to be putting my money on this game at all, to be honest. What was your first thoughts on this, Ozzy?
How can you back Adrian Lewis? I thought a telling factor was what he put his social media straight after his defeat at the Worlds, and he basically said, with no crowd, it just didn't feel like the Worlds. Well, there's no difference going into this tournament, so how can you back him? The thing is, as you know, we've gone into, you know, another lockdown now. He knows what it's going to be like. He's just going to have to pull his finger out and say it's a case of, I mean, he's fortunate to be in. I think he's snuck in because of the extended format as well. Is it a case of, is he free rolling? Is he just going to go in? He knows he's against a somewhat vulnerable opponent in Smith because he's out of form as well. And we know that if the best Adrian Lewis turns up, it's a winnable game for him. But everything that he's come out with, particularly when it's talking about the lack of crowds and his overall form, there's just nothing to say you can back him. But the same with Smith. He just had a bad day at the office, didn't he? But at the same time as well, it's 1st to 6. It's quick. We know it'll be a quick game, actually. I think the throwing style will suit each other. From a betting perspective, I'd just say stay away. There's just nothing to choose from me. But on a prediction, I would definitely side with Michael Smith. There's just too many factors against AD Lewis to tip him up for this.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said about Adrian Lewis, to be honest. It's sad as someone who's a big fan of AD Lewis, you know, in his pomp, and we've spoken Adam, about how good it is for darts when he's flying and playing his best stuff. But that loss to Danny Baggish in the Worlds was really worrying, wasn't it? I mean, he just didn't look at it at any point. There was a couple of sets where his standard went up a little bit, but even then it was a real struggle for him. Everything was an effort. I mean, I remember him sort of G'ing himself up after it in a 140, and I'm thinking, like, how low have you fallen here? You know, like, this is someone who normally hits 180s on autopilot when he's playing well. So it's a totally different Adrian Lewis. And I've been one to kind of say you can't rule people out when they've got that much talent, but everyone in this field's got talent. So I think you can rule Adrian Lewis out. And I hope he makes me eat my words, you know, but I can't see it. Michael Smith, on the other hand, is someone I said in the last video, I actually quite fancy him to go really well in this. I think he could be a good value pick to win this. 33-1 and 7-1 for his quarter. He made the final last year, missed tournament darts against Peter Wright. We all know about his problems closing out big games on TV in the past, but he did win a couple of back-to-back Players' Championships this year. And if you take out that World's loss to Jason Lowe, we were really bullish about Michael Smith's prospects. And one bad day at the office doesn't really change that. So I think he comes here fired up. You've got that Premier League place up for grabs, which somebody's got to snatch. I'm sure he feels like he's been harshly done by to be cut out of the Premier League. And maybe a big run here will get him in. So I think I saw Sky Bet price up who's going to get the Premier League place. And I think Michael Smith was put in as the favourite. So they obviously think he might put a run together here as well. And I think 7-1 to win this quarter, if you will, could be really, really interesting.
Yeah, 7-1 to win the quarter. He would have to come past the likes of Gerwyn Price probably down the line. So I wouldn't look that far ahead, but I think Smith will win this. 2-5 to win the game. I'll be looking at the handicaps, the minus 1.5 handicaps, 4-6. I'll be looking at a minus 2.5 handicap. Then it gives you everything from 6-3 downwards, to be honest. So yeah, I'll be looking at that. But like you say, two players out of form. I think that if Smith would have beat Jason Lowe in his first game at the Worlds, he would have been the 8th seed in this anyway. So he wouldn't even be taken in this part of the draw. But he didn't get the job done. So we are where we are. On to the third game in the top half of the Masters draw. We've got Glen Durant against Mervyn King. One of the guys' favourites, obviously, Mervyn King. King's 11-10, Durant's in the region of 10-11. So this is pretty much a coin toss game, as Ozzy alluded to earlier. Glen he did better than expected from me in the Worlds. Mervyn King brushed aside Jose de Sousa, which hurt me, but then he didn't really turn up against Price, which was a shame. I just wonder if King can keep this form going. He was in form in the Players' Championships before the Worlds, showed good form at the Worlds before going out. Can he keep it going? He's getting on a bit now, King. But I'll hand over to Pieman, who is the expert Mervyn King panellist.
Well, I'm not going to come on here and say that Mervyn King's not going to continue this form. I hope he does. And I think he can, to be honest. I think there's been a bit of a change in his game recently, Merv. He just seems to be... there's a lot less stress about the way he's throwing. He's not sort of feeling it all the time. I know he was playing the antics against MVG in the Players' Champs, but like he seems really content with the way he's throwing at the moment. And I thought, looking at his World's performance, people will say, oh, yeah, he was a bit disappointing against Gerwyn Price. But that's testament to how well he was playing, that he was coming into that match against who is now the world champion. And people were saying, oh, I quite fancy him to beat him. That's how well Mervyn King's been playing recently. He averaged 99, 103 and 99 in his 3 World Championship games. Compare that to Glen Durant. He averaged 85 against Diego Portella. He played better against Danny Baggish, although that game nearly went to a last set. Baggish missed a set dart for 3-all. And then Dirk van Dijvenbode, I know he had a lead in that game, but he only averaged 90. I mean, he was still way below the Glen Durant that's won the Premier League, won the BDO, like one of the best players in the game. So I haven't seen any evidence to me to suggest that Glen Durant is back to where, people might think he is. And I haven't seen any evidence that Mervyn King isn't still in great form. So I think King odds against 11-10 looks like a really good pick to me.
I agree. And I disagree with what you said, Smido, about King and he underperformed, because I think anyone who's going in and averaging just short of 100, as Pieman said, it's well King had been playing. And you can argue that if it wasn't for how well... It was probably Gerwyn Price's best performance of the tournament against Mervyn King.
I agree with that.
Yeah, he threw better against King than he did against Anderson, and that's because Anderson was ultimately rolled over in the first half of the game. King is, again, it's a short format. He's not going to get anything from Durant in terms of, like wild celebrations, which he doesn't like. And he's throwing excellent. And you mentioned about, form of the life. And we know King's been around a long time now. And, back in pre-2010, he was in, the Premier League, etc., pushing the top, top 10. But you can argue that King's probably, rejuvenated and probably again in the form of his life. Got to a final, did really well at Worlds again. Coming into this, and he's going to be one of those players that, he was saying about Jose de Sousa, no one wants to face him. I put Mervyn King in that same category. Who wants to face him? Because on his day, he can beat anybody. Scoring's never an issue. Finishing is never an issue. And I think I would happily take Mervyn King at the price he is over Glen Durant, who, as Pieman said, has never looked good. Even when he beat Danny Baggish, didn't impress.
Well, and if you do fancy King to win this, then you should be looking at backing him either outright or for the quarter, because the seeder waiting in the second round for either Durant or King is Rob Cross, seeded number 4, which we've already flagged up as a false ranking in terms of
false position.
Yeah, he certainly hasn't been playing like the world number 4 for months, to be honest. And we saw that at the Worlds, didn't win a game at the Worlds. That Rob Cross awaits in the second round, and either if Glen or Mervyn wins the first round, they'll be fancying they can get through and pass.
Well, I think Mervy's 13-2 to win this quarter, and I personally think that's one of the stronger selections in the tournament on first look.
Yeah, because like you say, if he can get past Glen as you guys fancy, you definitely fancy him to get past Cross, and then we're in against the likes of Aspinall, etc. Who we're going to come on to now, because the fourth and final game in this top half of the draw is Ian Diamond White against Mensur Suljovic. White again got dumped out of the Worlds early yet again, as we kind of get used to with him, unfortunately. And Mensur played the idiot against Gary Anderson and ended up winding himself up more than Gary in the end. So again, this is another tight game. 5-6 Ian White, 11-10 Mensur. Like you say, over the best of 11 legs, it looks pretty open to me. And what was your first thoughts on this one, Pieman?
Well, I thought this game, we were saying about the quality of the field and stuff. Like these are probably two players you would struggle to make a case for them actually winning the tournament. And they're both, Ian White, the perennial floor player. Everyone's always sort of touting him up to do well on TV, and he hasn't even managed it. This year looked like a prime opportunity for him with no crowds in, to go and do it at a big TV tournament, and he didn't manage to do it. I thought he was a bit unlucky at the Worlds, to be honest. He ran into Kim Huybrechts in inspired form. I think White averaged 101, Huybrechts 102. I mean, not many people going out with over a ton average, but that is so the way it always seems to go for Ian White, and you do kind of run out of the hard luck stories a little bit, and you have to start wondering, is he ever going to do it? He's been in this tournament every year since 2015, and he's lost in the first round every single time. So, if you're going on the form line, that is not someone you want to be getting with. And to be honest, really, you should be bullish if you're playing Mensur Zulovitch, another man that's not really been in any kind of form. He's had a bad year off the hockey as well with some personal stuff, but his form has suffered. As you say, he got through to round 3 of the Worlds and lost to Gary Anderson. Everyone will remember that game for the antics with the table and the slow play, Gary getting annoyed and stuff. But looking a bit beyond that, Gary Anderson, I know he got to the final, averaged 92, and Mensur averaged 89. He beat Matthew Edgar in the previous round, but Edgar didn't really ask too many questions of him, to be honest. So I'm not too keen on Mensur, but not really that keen on Ian White either. I'd probably dodge this game, to be honest. But I'll be cheering for Ian White.
I would agree. Betting perspective, steer away. But at the same time as well, just going off world form, Ian White looked a hell of a lot better than what Mensur Suljovic did, and Mensur played more games. And I think it says that all that Suljovic resulted into, the silly antics that he got up to, changing tables, really slowing it down. And I think that just reeks of a guy who doesn't trust his form whatsoever. And I agree about Ian White. He's talked up, and it's like it's chalk and cheese, two different players on the floor, outstanding. Put him on the stage, and it's just like he can't handle the pressure. Now, we can't blame the crowds because nobody's there. You've got a referee, a couple of scorers, and that's as good as it gets. But that saying, I think he'll beat Mensur Suljovic because I just think it's consistency. There is no way you can confidently tip up Mensur Suljovic just the way he's throwing. None whatsoever. And forgetting what's happened in the past for Ian White, those sort of records are there to be broken. And I think he'll get his first win. But he'll basically leave the first round for the first time ever. And I think he'll confidently dispatch Suljovic, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd be with Ian White if I had to have a bet, but at 5 to 6, I can find better 5 to 6 shots than Ian White in a TV tournament, to be honest. So I won't be running away. I won't be in a rush to get on it, but yeah, it might be ACCA kind of material. Nathan Aspinall is the seed that awaits either White or Mensur. Aspinall's the number 5 seed. He went out to Vincent Van Dever, didn't he, at the Worlds, and he'll probably be disappointed at that, Nathan, given that he'd made the semi-final at the Worlds in the last 2 years, but I know Pieman did flag up that Aspinall wasn't in great form going into the Worlds. Yet again, Pieman was right. He's going to want
again. That's a strong comment. Yeah.
Well, he's another player, Aspinall, who's going to want to, be wanting to make a statement early doors in this season. So he'll be quite happy. He'll be quite happy with the draw that he's got, either White or Mensur. But yeah, any comments on Aspinall while we're on him?
Well, for me, again, just as I kind of said in the Worlds, I see I see the case for people saying he's going to have a run here because obviously he's got the winner of that game, which is one of the more favourable round one players to be playing. He's then probably got Rob Cross or the winner of his game. So again, another favourable section to be in. But I just couldn't be getting with him at the price, to be honest. I'm not saying that he can't win it, but yeah. I was quite lucky. You'll remember he was quite lucky to get past Scott Waite in the first round, to be honest, in his first game.
Survived match.
And then Vincent Van Dever. I love Vincent, but if you've got real aspirations of going deep in the World Championships, Vincent's the kind of player you've got to be lucky to get past, and he didn't. So I couldn't be putting up Aspinall with any confidence. I'm not quite sure he's where he was sort of 12 months ago, but I'm sure he'll get back there, just not for me in this tournament.
I think he puts too much pressure on himself. I think the interview where he got beat off Van der Voort said it all. He came out and said something basically along the lines of, this year's the year I'll win the World Championships. And why are you coming out with stupid statements like that? You're a long way away. If you're in the final, fine. You can talk about it. But you're a long way away. And it reminds me of when Michael Smith had a run to the final, but he was piling so much pressure on himself and he just lost his game completely. And this is Aspinall again. I think from what he was, I think it was the UK Open he won, and he was largely unfancied then. He was coming through, he's impressing. But now he's one of the top dogs. Did well at the Premier League, to be fair. But then he was got into the Worlds, and he has, I think, what was that, his third World Championship? And he'd reached 2 semi-finals. It's kind of nigh on unheard of. And he's going and saying, of course, yeah, nothing against saying you're going to win it, but then coming out interviews, before you're playing against good players, and it backfired on him. But maybe a shorter format will suit him. Quick fire, legs, maybe that will, because he's got the scoring. But again, you can't confidently back somebody. I'd rather back Mervyn King over Nathan Aspinall. I have more confidence in backing King for someone who's throwing well compared to Aspinall, regardless of rankings.
I flagged up Aspinall in our video a couple of weeks ago at 18-1, but just mainly because of the draw. His first game is going to be against White or Zulovitch. Then he's looking at possibly Cross or So that was my kind of angle in there. But yeah, he's not a man in form, and I think that's the top half of the draw. 12 players covered. There is betting on the quarter betting if you like. So there's 6 runners in each of these races. So the quarter one betting. So to make the semi-final, if you like, Gerwin Price 10-11. No surprises odds on there. Gary Anderson, who he beat in the final, 11-4. Michael Smith flagged up by Pieman at 7-1. Cullen 11. Bunting 22. I think he's been overpriced, Bunting, and Lewis the outsider at 28. So that's the top quarter, if you like, the first 6 players. And then the second quarter, so to make the semi-final, Aspinall 2-1, Cross 3-1, Durant 6, Merv 13-2, flagged up by the boys, Ian White 15-2, and Mensur 8. So yeah, that covers the first 12 players, if you like.
I think a Smith Quarter one, Merv, quarter two double will be paying you over 60-1. So that might be worth a couple of quid for a long shot interest. Smith, more a psychological pick that he needs this for his career. It's a pivotal moment in his career. And Merv King on the bare form, I just think he's been overlooked, to be honest.
Yeah, and that quarter two, I think, is going to be we're going to come on to quarter three and quarter four in a different video, but it's going to be the most open because you've got Aspinall in there, not in the best of form, Cross in there, no form at all, Glen again. So that's why it's the most open, but we'll come on to the other ones. So thanks for tuning in. The action gets underway on the 29th, live on ITV over a 3-day period, and we're going to be previewing the bottom half of the draw in a separate video. So thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.